Hello, it's Wender again. We are moving to the psychodynamic theory of personality. And this lecture is prepared by myself and Dr. Hong Jae Yao from JCU Singapore. And in this lecture, we will cover Freud's concept of human nature as well as psychodynamic theories if you remember from the last lectures, including its structure building blocks and also the theory related to human development, human growth, and also other aspects of a theory. So let me read this quotation for you or a description for you to see what's going on. Here it is. The number one player on the tennis team is getting ready to play for the state title. She has never met her opponent before, so she decides to introduce herself before the match. She strolls onto the court where her opponent was warming up and says, "Hi, I'm Amy, glad to beat you." You can imagine how embarrassed Amy was. Frustrated, she corrected her innocent mistake and walked over to her side of the court and warmed up. Wow, Amy thought, where did that come from? So this is from the sentence, "Hey, I'm Amy, glad to beat you." I think she wanted to say glad to meet you. And why? She said beat you rather than meet you. Okay, let's move on to another story. You are chatting with a friend and say, "I'm going to the liquor store." Sorry, I mean library. So liquor, library, they're different, very, very different. Then why you have a tongue slip in this sentence, a very simple sentence? What do you think? I give you a couple of moments to think about. What do you think? I'm glad to beat you instead of I'm glad to meet you. I am going to the liquor store rather than I am going to the library. What happened? Well, you may think, oh, just a simple mistake. Humans always make mistakes. Yes, I agree with that, but are these just a casual verbal slip-ups? And Freud did not agree with it. And this is where psychodynamic comes in the psychology history. And Freud had been thought that this silly mistake were actually a revealing display of unconsciousness. What does it mean? Unconsciously, Amy was thinking that she would beat the opponent. So the slip-up was glad to beat you rather than glad to meet you. And you, as a student, you are supposed to go to a library, but deep inside, unconsciously, actually, you would like to go to a bar to drink with your friends rather than studying with your friends. So this is what Sigmund Freud thinks about the verbal slip-up. It always reflects the unconsciousness of the person. We have discussed, and we move on to the discussion of Freud's conceptions of human nature. First, he regarded the mind as an energy system. As an energy system, what does it mean? It means that there is a limitation of the energy. There is a limit of the energy. So if we spend more energy on this task, and then we may spend less energy on other tasks. And Freud considered mental life from a biological point of view, the energy system point of view. The mind, being part of the body, is a mechanistic energy system. To save the energy, the mind strives to achieve quiescence, to be inactive so that we can save more energy for the future use. This is the first perspective, first concept of human nature from Freud's perspective. And what next? The individual in society. The traditional view on the person means people are good, but society corrupts people. And Freud believes that sexual and aggressive drives are an important part of human nature, and which means that people are inborn bad rather than good. And individuals function according to a pleasure principle, seeking the pleasurable gratification of those drives. The role of society is to curb these biological nature tendencies, which means that everyone had the very bad drives, very bad, for example, sexual and aggressive drive as an important part of human being. And it's the society to play a role to define, to normalize people's, to refine people's behavior, to make people become a better person. So this is different from the traditional view that people are basically good. Looking at the building block of psychodynamic theory. And first, level of consciousness and the concept of unconsciousness. For example, this is the iceberg of the consciousness and unconscious level. So the bottom level is the unconscious level, and which means we are not aware of what's going on at the bottom of the iceberg. And the second level, the middle level, is the preconscious level. What does it mean? For example, if I ask you now, what color is my dress? You may not notice that. But now, if I ask you, you will notice that if I ask you the same question tomorrow, you would be able to answer it, which means that at this level, without special attention, and we may not notice that. But with specific attention, we will notice what's going on at this level. And the upper level of the iceberg is the conscious level, which means we are aware of it, we are conscious about it. So this is the three levels of Freud's consciousness and unconsciousness. And under these concepts, the level of consciousness and unconsciousness, there are several concepts as well. For example, dreams. Dream analysis. I think all of us are very familiar with dream analysis by Freud. And in dreams, Freud has some different layers of concepts. One is manifest, which means the storyline, the story itself in the dream. What exactly happened in the dream or in the text, in the description of the dream. And from the manifest with the latent, which is the ideas, emotions, drives that are manifested in the story itself. And also symbolism, for example, female females are represented by church, chapel. This is the symbolism. And also wish fulfillment. Dreams are symbological represent fulfillment of unconscious wishes. For example, unconscious desire to kill someone represented uh, in a dream as a body in a dream. And this is the wish fulfillment in the dream analysis. So this is the first concept in Freud's level of consciousness and unconsciousness. And what next? The motivated unconscious. This is another building block for Freud's structure of his theory. What does it mean? It means motivations to keep traumatic thoughts hidden in the unconscious mind to manage anxiety. A person after experience traumatic events or traumatic thoughts, and the person often experience anxiety and even PTSD, post-traumatic uh, disorder, stress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder. And we have the motivation to try to hide this kind of traumatic thoughts in the unconscious mind so that we can manage anxiety. So very often, these traumatic thoughts or experience came out in the dream, which means that's the unconsciousness in our mental life. Conscious thoughts, feelings, actions are motivated by unconscious. For example, when we analyze the dream, that's the consciousness. When the unconsciousness, for example, the trauma, thoughts or ideas or experience occurred in the dream, then it becomes conscious thoughts. So these are the important concepts of Freud's psychodynamic theory. What else? Another structure building block is there exists a psychological agency that is consistent but differing in degree of consciousness. And the three important concepts of this is the id, ego, superego. Id which means in the uh, unconscious level, and is the pressure and avoiding pain. Any drives to achieve that driven by pressure principle and avoiding pain, that's in the id level. And ego, and including pressure, avoid pain, tempered by reality, for example, compromises, demands of id, superego, and the world. For example, I give you an example of it. For example, if a person would like to make lots of money, then robbing a bank is one of the methods. That's driven by the pressure principle. And it's not acceptable by the social norm because robbing a bank is a crime. So we should not do that. Then what happened? It comes in ego, still driven by pressure and avoiding pain principle. But it is between the reality, the social norms, and the law, as well as the id to rob a bank. And then it comes to superego. Do the right thing, be good, be perfect, according to the moral code, according to the social norm. This is the conscious in Freud's view. So we have three levels, and superego is the drive to be good, to be perfect, and to abide the law. And this three level is in Freud's mind that it is the most important aspect in the mental life, and we often are driven by it. But because of the social norms, so we do not behave according to it, but very often we behave according to the superego. So these are the structures of Freud's theory and then process. And we always regard mental life as a process, mental health, mental well-being as a process. So in Freud's mind, drives are the key in personality process. A drive is a source of energy that seeks expression and tension reduction. And there are different views about the drive, for example, life and death instinct, and also the dynamic of functioning, anxiety, and mechanism of defense. So these are the three important concepts of the process. Let's look into it one by one. Process drives. For example, life instincts. The life instance includes drives associated with ego and sexual instinct. That's the id. And impels people towards the preservation and reproduction of the organism. Freud gave a name to the energy of the life instinct, that's libido. This is an important term in Freud's theory, libido, and it's more related to sexual energy. And there is another instant, that's death instant, which means it's a very opposite of the life instant. For life instant is something that to support the person to survive, for example, through reproduction, the human being survive and to have the next generation. But the death instance is a very opposite of the life instance. It involves the aim of the organism to die and or to return to a inorganic state. Many people escape psychological problems through suicide. So Freud believed that death instance is one of the important manifestation for psychological problem. For example, when people cannot solve psychological problems, they committed suicide. And this is the concept of death instinct from Freud's perspective. So, suicide from Freud's perspective can be understood as a manifestation of a drive to die. And also is a mechanism for people to escape from the psychological problems or mental disorders. And there is another drive, the dynamics of functioning. Many behaviors do not seem related to sex or aggression, even though Freud emphasized a lot on sexuality as well as aggression, that's libido. And what was Freud's answer? Freud believed that it seems that not everything is related to sex or aggression, but a given instinctual drive could be expressed in a wide variety of ways. For example, affection may be a modified expression of the sexual instinct, and also maybe, for example, mad, angry may be a modified expression of the aggressive instinct. So this is the reason he believes that every behavior is driven by sexual instinct and aggressive instinct, which absolutely, from the perspective of modern psychology, we don't agree with that. Anxiety, that's another process of personality. Anxiety is a painful emotional experience that signals or alerts the ego to danger, which means the ego cannot balance the id and the superego. Then we become anxious and even anxiety disorder. Anxiety represents a repetition of the earlier traumatic experience, but in a, in a form as a mental disorder or mental health problem. And these are Freud's perspective about anxiety is a painful emotion and often caused by the childhood experience, for example, the adversity in the childhood. And what are the mechanisms against anxiety? And Freud believed the following mechanisms are the ones people used to avoid anxiety or to cope with anxiety. The first one is denial. It didn't happen this very often. For example, people diagnosed a terminal illness, they often experience the denial process. It didn't happen. It's not the case. And also projection. For example, you are crazy. It's not me. If you told me that I am experiencing anxiety, then I would think you are crazy, not me. And also isolation and process anxiety or the traumatic experience without emotions and also isolated from others. Rationalization, now it doesn't count as cheating. For example, people were caught, students are caught cheating. They say, no, it doesn't count as cheating. So this is the way that people rationalize the experience and the anxiety so that they can cope with anxiety. And also sublimation, unacceptable impulses channeled into more constructive behavior. And there is another one, repression, events dismissed from consciousness, which means entering unconsciousness level rather than becoming conscious about the experience. So these are the mechanisms against anxiety from Freud's perspective. And what about development and growth from psychodynamic perspective? The development of instance and stages of development are the following stages. The oral stages at age of 1 and the anal stages at the age of 2 to 3 and phallic stage as well as latency and genital stages. And as you can see, all the stages are related to biological stage, rather than anything from social or environmental perspective. These are the stages of development from the psychodynamic theory. So I will not go through it very in details yet. You can look at the PowerPoints about the details, what it means of different stages. And how to assess personality. There are a couple of tools in Freud's psychodynamic theory. And one is the dream analysis. We will talk about that. Use the case of Dora to show you how to analyze a dream from Freud's perspective. There are other tests, projective tests, which means presenting items are purposefully ambiguous. And there are different tests. For example, the photo showed there, and also there are other tests as well. And for example, assessing personality, project tests, projective test, thematic a perception test, which we call it TAT, which means that a picture with unclear meaning is presented in front of the participants or the client and ask the client to give a story of the picture. For example, have an actor in the story and have the beginning of the story and have the middle of the story and the end of the story. And this is what we call TAT. And we will talk about it in tutorial so that you will have a better understanding of this test. Well, Freud is one of the most known psychologists in the history, and his publication is the most cited publications with the most cited citations in the history of psychology. And his contribution to psychology is important, although lots of his theories we don't agree. And for example, he developed thought theory. In many psychotherapy, thought, thought therapy, not thought theory, thought therapy still use talking as a technique to communicate with the client. So thought therapy is one of the most important contribution by Freud. And because of his theory related to sex, aggressive instinct, everything is driven by sexuality. So he has a lot of challenges. And the most well-known challenges to Freud, one is the Alfred Adler, and he emphasized conscious thought, social factors over sexual urges and unconscious process. So this very different from Freud's foundation, from Freud's building block of psychodynamic theory. And also Carl Jung. Carl Jung actually was Freud's student. He's Freud's friend, but they split as Jung felt that Freud overemphasized sexuality, libido, the concept of libido. So these are the challenges to Freud. I don't expect you to know every aspect, for example, building block and process of these two challenges. And because for the social dynamic, we would like to introduce Freud to you so that you understand Freud's Freud's theory because his theory is the foundation of psychodynamic theory. And of course, I encourage you to criticize Freud's theory, what you agree, what you disagree, because the theories was developed many, many, many years ago. So from the modern contemporary psychological perspective, many of Freud's research method, analyze angle, and the theories are not acceptable anymore in the contemporary social psychology or personality psychology perspective. So this is the introduction of psychodynamic theory. And thank you so much. And if you have any questions, just simply email me. My email address is wendy.lee@jcu.edu.au, and we will move on to the case of Dora to use Freud's method of dream analysis to analyze Dora's dream in the next lecture. Thank you so much. See you soon.